This is the Authentic Dating series brought to you by Ahmad and David,
where we explore what it takes to have a dating life you're excited about.
Hey guys, I'm David.
I'm Ahmad.
And this is the Authentic Dating series. So in this week's episode, we have a very, very interesting man, right? Benjamin Daly. He joins us on the episode, and actually he coaches women in helping them find a man, helping them find a man of their dreams. He's in very similar work to us, but just with women. So for you lady listeners, I'm sure you'll be looking forward to hearing him. He's like the UK's Matt Hussey.
For those who know Matt Hussey.
Yeah. But and we sat down with him virtually, of course, and we talked about what dating can look like post lockdown. I keep saying post corona, but like post corona world hasn't happened yet. We're post lockdown. And
we can dream that. We can dream.
Yeah. Post corona, we'll be frolicking in the meadows naked,
freely touching and hugging, and like never before.
There'll be orgies at sex parties, and people will just be in pleasure constantly.
People will wear signs in the street that say "free hugs."
Yeah, and then there'll be people saying that everyone still has to wear masks because they decree it in some way.
But I was really excited. Bless you. That was Chloe in the background sneezing there. I was really excited to get Ben on to this podcast because it's not often that we have someone who's really in the industry on the female side and supporting that, and especially now, David, we've been talking a lot about post lockdown dating, and it was interesting to get that that female perspective from a dating coach on that side. What are the problems that women are dealing with going into this, and I think that's very interesting for our listeners, because I know a lot of men are puzzled and befuddled about how to act now. If they were having problems before, now there's an extra layer of lockdown and social distancing and all these things to contend with, and this is what we go into in this podcast.
Yeah, and then one of the things we finish up with, and I say finish up, is probably the second half of the episode, is we really talk about what a man needs to have in his profile to create a killer profile. So you're like a sniper on the dating apps, So you have a sort of profile that women just go, when they see. And I think this is something that, probably quite a few of you have tuned in for the first time, maybe to get that bit of information. But it's worth listening to the first half about post lockdown dating, because it gives you an idea of what the world's going to look like now. And we even talk about our own personal, how we've dealt with it and thrive through it. But the second half is really very tactical from a member, but it's like you really get a sense of what you need to do, and you can really look at what you're not doing. And listen with really honest eyes. Don't be trying to kind of go, I think I'm kind of doing that. Be very honest with yourself. Are you doing the things that we're talking about? Because that's what really matters.
Yeah, there were some key tips, and really, I think there was in general, I think there was 3 major things that was actually spoken about. I know photos was one of them, and then the profile itself, and then also how to actually engage in conversation. And these are so important now because more and more people have now turned to online dating as a primary place to connect, and even with then moving on to video dating. So it's so important, and that's why in this one episode we got the rules of how to date after lockdown. Our personal and professional opinion on how things are going to look, our expert opinion, our expertise, expert fucking tease on how things are going to look after all this is settled, because there are going to be some huge changes, and I think you guys are going to find it very interesting as listeners, men and women listening to this podcast. You're going to find it very interesting what we have to say about how things are going to look and how it's going to change the dating landscape, because things are not going to be the same as when David and I were in our 20s running around frolicking and nakedly rolling in the bushes with women here and there. You can't do that anymore. You have to wear a mask and do that. So things have changed. So this is a really important episode, really key, and I know you're going to love it.
Yeah, and for the guys out there, we actually have a free ebook. If you sign up to our newsletter, we have a free ebook where we actually go over 8 huge mistakes men make on dating apps, and we actually cover some of the stuff in this episode, but we probably only cover about a quarter of what's in the ebook. the ebook actually takes you much further in terms of like how to engage, what to say, how to move things off the dating app onto WhatsApp and things like that. So it's definitely worth you adding yourself to the mailing list so you can get that that free ebook. And any other business? We are doing our create attraction through conversation course. I struggle to say that every single time. Katka.
CATC. Katka. Katka.
So we're going to be running that again. It's a free 1.5 hour workshop where basically we take you through why your conversations are boring and shit, you know, why you're not connecting with women in the way you want, and then we tell you how to do so. You know, it's really as simple as that. It's interactive. We've got a wonderful exercise that really cements like what it is that's missing, what your game is missing. You know,
and for one lucky participant, we actually, so what did we do? We actually take you through that exercise, and then everyone else gets to experience it like vicariously, because we don't have time in the 1.5 hours to take everyone through it. But you see the difference, and like we ran this recently. And it was just amazing to see, like, everyone had their hands up when I asked, you know, who saw the difference between how the person was communicating in the first example, and then when we took them through the process. It was a beautiful exercise.
Yeah, so if you want to grab yourself a ticket for that, that's going to be on the 5th of August. I'm losing my days right now. At 8:30, so you'll be able to sign up for that. So if you'll be 8:30 p.m. Sorry, no AM. BST, British time. So we'll be running that. You'll be able to get a ticket. The free ticket will be in the show notes, or if not, you'll be able to go to our website. It'll probably be there, and also you'll be able to find it on Instagram. So you can find it everywhere if you want to. So yeah, I think that's it.
Cool. Yeah. Well, without further ado, let's jump right in. So we're joined today by a very special guest. His name's Benjamin Daly, and he's a dating coach for women. Benjamin, why don't you introduce yourself and just tell us a little bit about who you are and how you got into coaching women around dating?
Yeah, sure. Firstly, thank you so much for having me on today, guys. It all started when I was about 15 years old. I remember I was useless at dating back then. And I remember seeing Neil Strauss come on to This Morning. And I remember seeing the interview and I was absolutely fixated. I was a bit rebellious at school, but as soon as I saw that he had a book out, I remember BMXing down to Waterstones to buy my copy. And literally, I remember that weekend, I didn't put the book down. And from there, I started reading tons and tons of books on the topic to try and kind of figure it out for myself. But I mean, several years after that point, I got better at it and I was able to communicate effectively and I was able to get results and end up getting into a relationship. But it changed during about 25 years old. I noticed that a lot of my female friends and family members were having real issues with this, particularly females. And they were looking to get settled down and start families. So I sort of unofficially started coaching, and I remember helping my sister. She was in a bad relationship at the time, and I coached her in terms of how to find a decent guy. And there was never any intent for me to actually become any kind of dating coach. I was just kind of share advice and trying to help people, and they started getting results. So a lot of them got into relationships. My sister ended up getting married, and it worked the same for a lot of my other friends as well. And they started getting into relationships. And once kind of news spread that my method was working, that's when a few more people came to me. And I thought, okay, well, maybe I should write a book on this. So I started writing my book, which was Happily Ever After, A Woman's Guide to Online Dating. And that went to number one on Amazon. I started launching products and working my social media. And now I help clients, women who are mainly kind of 30 and above, who are looking to find the right guy. And that's my niche.
Wow. Yeah. That's an incredible story. Yeah, I love that. Yeah. I love how it just like one's like self-pursuit, to better your own, like, your own relationships ended up in you actually helping women and helping theirs. And I mean, I have to ask, like, what is it that you were teaching women that made them so successful then in getting relationships?
I think because I had a real interest in business and particularly communication, marketing, I was able to turn their processes into more of a funnel whereby they didn't see it as though it was a fate taking over and suddenly this amazing guy was to walk to their door and help them out. It was more about, right, how can we create a system which means that, you know, you're going to increase your probability of actually finding a decent guy? Because, you know, in my opinion, dating is a numbers game. And, you know, for a lot of women who are, you know, in a way conditioned from as early as Disney to, you know, books and movies, it's always made out to be so easy. But the reality is, you know, finding the right partner is no easier than running a marathon or building a business. It's a case of working with the numbers, finding, you know, a good selection of people coming your way, communicating with enough people, going on enough dates until eventually you turn, you know, 100 interactions into one relationship. So that was my approach. It was more of it was based on numbers and being able to help people increase the amount of interactions they're having, increase the quality of interactions they're having, improving their dates, being really, really specific about what it is they're looking for, and really understanding what the person they want to attract is looking for in a partner. Because I think it's very easy for us to look at the other person and think that they want what we want. But really, I see it like, you know, it's like filling up a petrol engine car with diesel fuel. The car just won't go very far. You have to know what type of fuel you need to put into the car. And I think men and women have very, very different needs, and being able to understand what each other wants is so critical for any relationship. And that goes both ways. You know, guys are just confused about what women want as much as women are confused about what guys want to.
Yeah. It's funny you mentioned Disney. We had, was it Amy from the Temple of Feminine on the podcast not too long ago, and we talked about the Disney effect and this kind of brainwashing that women go through from a young age, that like Prince Charming is going to come and, you know, save you from your life. He's going to come and just like whisk you off your feet, or even come to your bedroom and wake you from your slumber, you know? And it's like, and then women walk into the world and they believe that like dating is this kind of, it's a fate thing. You're just going to stumble across someone. The man's going to, you know, even, is it Pretty Lady? The movie from the late 80s, early 90s with Julia Roberts. And that he was literally arrived at her doorstep on a white horse, you know. And it's so dangerous because that's really just not how the world works, actually. A lot of it comes down to, you know, we believe is like doing that personal work and learning about yourself and what you want and what your needs are and your desires, and then being able to communicate that in the world is actually what has you kind of attract the right sort of person.
Yeah, that's so true. Yeah, I think it's so important to be able to see it from that other person's perspective and have realistic expectations. If you've got very unrealistic expectations of what's required to actually get there, you know, a lot of people fall short and they quit most times. They find it too hard, they experience rejection, and they just decide, you know what, this is not for me, or they blame themselves and they think, okay, maybe it's my fault, there's something wrong with me here, when actually there's absolutely nothing wrong with them. It's the case that they either haven't met enough people, or just the fact that the guys that they're seeing just aren't suitable, which is very normal.
I find that's actually a problem, especially like the women that I know of in my life who have a consistent complaint around men who are a certain type, or they can't find the right one, and they tend to date similar types of men that don't really want anything long term, and then they're always trying to create something long term or chase after these guys, and they don't see that. They don't, and I often say to them, like, you should judge a guy based on his actions, not on his words, because guys are like, they could be like poets, you know. they can say all sorts in the moment, you know, when they're in front of you, they say all sorts, but then in the actions, you're really going to see what maketh the man, you know. What does he really want for himself, or what is he really about? But it's interesting that that's actually something that's difficult for someone in the scenario to see when they're in it, and to kind of entertain those men again and again.
I think that's so true. You know, we do have to set these expectations which do hold us back so much. So being able to, like we talked about before, David, about being able to set up a system that means that you are consistently getting predictable results, and you know that, okay, if I've got X amount of guys that I'm talking to, it should only take maybe 3 months, 6 months to eventually find the right guy. But we can tweak every single part of the process. And if you're able to tweak those parts, whether it's just improving those photos by 20% or increasing your the quality of your conversation, just asking better questions, it can take only one moment to just change everything. Like, for example, when my sister met her partner, it was all based on one caption that was in her bio that just so happened that they resonated, and they just happened to watch a very niche TV show, and it just happened to be that one thing of thousands of things that happened to be the thing that connected them together.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
So today, gentlemen, we are here to talk about dating after lockdown, and what, dating after lockdown with a hint of corona, I like to say. What's that going to mean for the dating world and for men and women dating, and how basically we're going to navigate this. It's going to be a really interesting and unprecedented time, as we say so often. But it's had a huge effect on dating. Like, we know from our clients, going from, January, February, going out, enjoying themselves, to not being able to leave the house, Zoom dates becoming the absolute norm. And, the odd kind of illegal date almost happening here and there to social distance dates and so forth. Yeah. But I guess the next thing is, with bars now starting to open up, and, allow people to be in them, they're getting busy, but then people are still not going out as much. So more people are using kind of online dating. Like, how are people going to meet?
Yeah. Well, I think, like we said, safety is just so important. And I think that should always come first. So whenever you're listening to this, I think always make sure that you're doing the right thing and looking after your own health and looking after the health of the person that you're dating, as well as thinking of, how that's going to affect their families, your family. That's why I just think it's not worth taking the risk. And I think we have to be really, really careful about this to make sure that we are sticking to the rules. And it's harder. It is going to be harder for everyone, but I don't see why it's a reason not to persevere.
Yeah.
It's easy to quit. Especially if you're not getting results. It's so easy just to throw in the towel and go, okay, 2020 is a write-off. I just don't think it needs to be that way. It's still very easy, and we're fortunate enough to have online dating where you can build a connection without actually necessarily having that physical one-on-one time. And maybe it might slow things down a bit. Maybe that's what we need. We need to slow down the interaction from it being so immediate, and actually it's about time to build a connection with someone. Go back to how it used to be for our parents' generation.
The days before internet dating,
courting. We'll be running online courses on how to court. How to court. We brush up on the 1900s dating techniques. But it's true. And that's actually definitely something we saw very early on, right? Because people were scared and fearful, but the human drivers, or biological drivers of wanting, wanting affection, wanting intimacy, and desiring love and affection would, that's where Zoom dating just exploded. All of a sudden, it just became like, we just adapted, right? We just went, right, let's just move on to this. This is our lifeline for now. And I think for me, what really comes up as well is that what I'm aware of out in society is also, how do people navigate that fear? What is the etiquette? What is the way to proactively engage? As you say, not to quit, but to lean, as a mentor, I suppose, of ours would say, is to lean into the problem and lean into the challenge. Right? Is to go, right, this is the challenge, but if you're single and you want to create something, then how to do that? Especially because I think, for a lot of guys who, if they were struggling to date before, they would have had their excuses as to why that was, and men and women, right? But now there's like these hard and fast excuses, like, well, people are not going to be interested. It's dangerous now, or that's not what people are thinking about. I mean, even for us, we've had this on the podcast. David has been like, do people even want to date now? Is this something to be? Is this something to be talking about in this era now? Because is it really at the forefront of people's minds? But we know just based on conversations that we're having, that yes, people are interested. It's just how do they safely navigate these waters?
Yeah. Well, I think it's a lot to do with communication. I remember I saw a friend of mine who I've known since I was a kid on the weekend. It was so weird. I was like, we can't hug. You know, I've known him for pretty much all of my life, and it felt so awkward having that conversation. But because he works in a hospital, I just thought, you know, it's just not worth the risk. But I think it just comes down to communication. We can still come together, but as long as you avoid that awkwardness in advance, and say, you know, this is where I feel comfortable. What about you? You know, maybe we just meet up. Maybe we don't. You know, we don't have physical connection, but we can still chat. We go for a drink. We do whatever else. And I think, like we were talking about before, it's just about navigating this space and doing it safely and doing it in a way whereby you can still keep momentum in your dating life and relationships, but just finding a way to adapt. What do you guys think?
I've come to see. I think each individual needs to decide on their kind of how much risk they're willing to take on, because ultimately, back in this kind of the world we're living in right now with Corona out there, it's like, okay, you know, what's the risk of you getting sick? What's the risk of you getting seriously sick? If that you pass it on, is there anyone that's kind of reliant upon you or anything like that? You know, but you still got to live, because otherwise, there's always some. I guess I'm always remembering a graph I was shown, actually, that there's actually 3 global pandemics currently. One of them is AIDS. One of them is what's it called? One of them is Corona. I think Ebola is still classed as a pandemic that's happening now. It's just that only one of them really impacts most of us. So there's like you said, there's always an excuse. So I think each person has to just go, okay, what's my, you know, where do I sit with the risk of like physical contact and so forth? Because, you know, if you just read the news, you might not want to leave your house at all.
Yeah.
And I think if that's the thing we're living in now, is the fear. And like when it comes to dating, you know, like some people we've spoken to, guys have said, oh, you know, I'm not going to go to bars because, you know, I can't actually go and talk to a woman in the bar because, you know, I'm not allowed to. Whereas there's some women we've spoken to, you know, even like when it was kind of the height of lockdown or just when it was easing up, where they were saying quite openly, like they're quite happy to break the rules because they really want to feel some sort of human-to-human connection, and they're just feeling a bit tired of just the Zoom dates. So I think it's a really individual decision to be made. I know that maybe is contrary to our government guidelines. As I'm saying, everyone should make their own choices. But I think it's like you have to sense into it personally and make personal decisions.
Yeah, I would add as well, like one of the things, and this is just something that that I've taken on board in my own life, is not to get lulled into the sense of I'm going to wait until this is all over before I take my next step, whatever that is. And I think it's really important to acknowledge that we don't know. This is like a classic "how long is a piece of string" scenario here.
Yeah.
So we don't, and already what started off as an event that was, in my mind at least, I don't know if this is what everyone sensed, but initially when we all went into lockdown, it was going to be for 2 weeks. And then 2 weeks turned into a month, and that turned into 3 months, and then now here we are. I don't even know what year it is anymore. So because, you know, and it doesn't matter who you're talking to, whether, you know, as a contractor or something you're doing in your business, and you're on the phone, and a lot of people were like, "Oh, let's just wait till this cools down," and I started saying, "No, let's just keep things going. You know, if we can do video calls." And if we can do phone call and we can set it up in a way that's safe, like let's do that, because I don't want to wait. I don't know. I just don't know. And I don't like that. Like, I don't like this idea that I'm just going to, because let's say, right, like we did wait for whatever it was until, like, let's say, like we said, all right, we're going to wait till things cool down, and then we'll continue the podcast, for example. You know, so much has changed like in that time. And if you've removed yourself from that sort of interaction and stuff, then getting back into it, it's like, you know, it's like trying to learn one of these new social media apps. It's like, you know, how does TikTok work? It's like, what are the features on this? And so there's a sense of like really acknowledging that, and kind of speaking into both of what you guys are saying. It's acknowledging the dangers, acknowledging the reality of the situation and the gravity of the situation, and those who are vulnerable and super susceptible and everything, and then also acknowledging the desire that you have to create something or what you want for yourself, and being proactive inside of that and going, because there is always a way. There is always a way. There's like, you know, like David and I used to record these podcasts. We always used to record it in person. And then very quickly we started doing it. You know, we discovered the app we're using now, Zencaster. It creates beautiful audio, and how to do Zoom and Zencaster at the same time. so you know, we made it work. And so that, and by the way, we're not sponsored by Zencaster. Just gotta throw it out there, or Zoom. But if you'd like to sponsor us, please do get in touch. But there you go. You know what I mean? It's that sort of thing. It's like we're of that mindset, and I think it's an important message for anyone out there to go, oh, okay, yeah, this is something that's important to me, and I should find a way. I shouldn't just wait until this blows over, because we're still waiting for it to die down. No one knows, right?
Yeah. And it's what you're talking about, adaptation and being able to find a way to push forward without actually stopping. I remember a friend of mine said, messy action is better than no action. I think that applies nowadays as well. You know, it's so easy just to throw in the towel and say, well, I'm going to stop and I'm going to wait. But like you were saying, Ahmed, it's we don't know when it's going to end. So we've just got to make the best of it at this moment. Even with lockdown, I don't know how you guys found lockdown. Did you? How did you use your time? Were you thinking about other ways in which you could grow and develop during that time?
Yeah, we were, when we first went into lockdown, we were still coaching people. So we just kept going, you know, we kept like coaching in a way that made sense and focused on the things that made sense, you know, like around like probably, you know, things like dating profiles, which we'll move on to in a bit.
Yeah.
And like actually expression and communication, and even, you know, coaching in Zoom days. Like, okay, how can you have, in the early days, it was like, okay, how can you have a date? Have a Zoom date. How can you make your Zoom date great? Okay. Well, you need to start thinking about what's inside the picture, what you're wearing, you know, can you create a fun theme? You know, one of our clients, he did some really beautiful stuff. Like he's really into his cocktails. So he picked a selection of cocktails and had them delivered to a girl's house just before the date. So when the date started, the cocktails arrived, and she was just like, wow, you know, there was like, and they sat and sipped the same cocktails together.
Amazing.
You know?
So good.
Yeah. For me, it was a little bit different as well. I mean, I also work in the care industry, so things kept going, and that's also why I have that mindset of you got to keep moving, because I really experienced what it was to have to keep moving while a lot of people went into lockdown, and they had that experience of just really being kind of shut off and isolated for a while. I had that experience of having to kind of go, I got to keep going out there and facing the world, and that taught me that it taught me what it was to lean in, you know, and to adapt and to in the moment, because I just had to, you know, it's like necessity is the mother of all invention. So I was just like, right, I've just got to make this work. And, you know, made sure I looked after my health. And I think the main thing, though, that did come out of it, which was amazing for me, was just slowing down. It's just like everything. You know, I really enjoyed that part of it. It was to slow down and be more thoughtful. You know, I'd spend some mornings, I would go to the park, and when we're able to do that and stuff, we'll go to the park and we'll do yoga in the park. Me and my partner would go and do some yoga in a park, and it was not something that we would have done before. I'd have been up and out before 9 and stuff. So you know, there was positives in it to be seen, and I think that's what David and I also share, is that we tended to do that. You know, we tend to focus on what can we do, as opposed to, oh no, we can no longer do this and we can no longer do that. We're like, well, what can we do? And we moved into that. Yeah.
So interesting. What was your biggest learnings from lockdown?
I think for me, it was that I'm highly adaptable to my terrain. You know, I went from, you know, being out all the time pretty much, you know, whether it be working and then meeting friends and doing stuff like that with people, to being at home pretty much 24/7 and still being able to enjoy my life and do fun things and stuff like that. And I think it's like, I can be really adaptable when necessary and quite resilient to what's happening around me. And also the ability to, if there's a lot of negativity coming my way, to recognize it and then go, okay, I'm only going to let a certain amount of that into my life.
Yeah. For me, it was definitely about self-trust. There was because again, like for what I had to deal with, like I said, I work in the care industry. I manage a small care home. A pandemic coming in was a very serious situation to be facing, and I just basically I had to step up with everything and keep on top of things, and so expansion was key. And so a big lesson for me was what I'm like, similar to what David said, is like, what am I capable of? Like what I can do when the time comes. Because it's all good. It's all, it's all easy and stuff to talk about what one would do in theoretically, but when you're faced with a serious issue, being able to actually stay calm, and I think that's definitely a key factor here, right? It's being grounded. Remaining grounded, remaining focused, and remaining calm amidst all of the news and the chaos, and being able to find like my own peace and my own way. Like genuinely, I don't think I've been as healthy as I am now because of it. Right? Like I really. Yeah. Because I stepped up in terms of all my I took, like I learned a lot about diet and nutrition and vitamins and stuff. So I was like, if there's a virus, I'm going to make sure that my body is as good as it can be. I mean, I didn't catch anything. I've not been ill since the whole thing started at all, and I'm very grateful for that. But the reason why I stepped up was because I was like, well, this sounds like something I'm likely to get. And if I get it, I want to be able to get it and get over it quickly. And so that was my thinking. It was an all-out. We were faced with an all-out sort of enemy, and it was like, well, this is bound to hit me. So let me do what I can to prepare.
Be prepared,
be prepared and put myself in the best possible state. Yeah. So it's a good question. Thanks. I was like, in my head,
how about yourself?
Yeah.
I think like what you were talking about before, David, about constantly being out and about. I was very much the same, just always traveling somewhere, seeing someone. And I realized that most of the things that I was doing wasn't actually achieving very much, or as much as I thought it was. And I realized that, the activities that really moved the dial for my business and in my life involved just a lot of solitude and being able to focus on getting work done, writing, producing content, planning, building products, those type of things, because it's so easy just to get caught up in the noise and just become, like a, headless chicken running around the place trying to be busy, but actually not achieving very much. So it was very insightful being able to just not have the choice of having all the social elements and the luxury of travel, and just being able to be limited to like 2 places. It's been a pretty productive month, and much more productive than prior to this. So it was a bit of a blessing, really. And I'm very thankful for not being sick during that time as well. Yeah.
I resonate with that as well. Like this element of actually being able to slow down, and there was definitely going into 2020 that I felt like the whole world was speeding up. There was just more and more and more and more and more. And living in London as well, it's a busy city, and people always complaining about the fact that you just can't meet up with people anymore. There's just never any time. Everyone's always running around doing different things. So I really that's a good point. Yeah,
so good.
So, wow, I feel like we could move straight off topic very easily. I think we're going to dive into, since like right now the big thing is obviously online dating, and the question we get a lot from men, and I see I'm in part of a couple of men's groups, and then the question that always comes up is like, I've got my dating profile, I think it's quite good, but I'm not getting any matches. What do I need to do? What's wrong with my profile? What do women want to see actually? When it comes to a man's dating profile?
Okay, so I would first start by saying your photos are the most important thing on your profile, without a doubt.
Definitely.
I think it was OkCupid said that 90% of the activity online is all based on photos.
Yeah.
So it's a very easy win. I just don't think it's an area that gets enough attention, and particularly being guys as well. We tend not to to want to have photos. It's a bit embarrassing asking your mate to take photos, but you know, if we can move past that and think, okay, well, you know, the goal is to attract an amazing partner, or to give ourselves as much choice to meet someone great. It makes sense to invest a bit of time to get this element right. And I've got a friend of mine, and he started in online dating. At first, he was really uncomfortable, but you know, we spoke about it. I was like, well, you know, if we just get some decent photos, you'll notice the improvements almost immediately. And as soon as we did, and we did a bit of editing, the results were just amazing. So actually, it's a bit all or nothing, I find, with online dating. If you've invested energy into getting really good photos, and particularly writing a bio as well, that's something that's so neglected, because most people are sitting there scratching their heads thinking about what to say, especially on apps like Bumble, where the woman is required to send the first message. You know, anyone, if there's nothing to grasp on, there's no hooks, there's nothing on the profile that makes it easy to start a conversation, then people will just message the person who it's easiest to start a conversation with. Even if you feel like it's a great match and the photos are great and they look like the type of person that you'd want to meet up with, if there's nothing to go off on the profile, most people just go and message the person that's easiest. So sorry, I know I've deviated, but I think with photos, I would say the first photo is absolutely critical. So in my book, I talk about the big five. So you've got the first one, which is the close-up. I'd always recommend having that as your main photo. So waist up, head and shoulders. Then you've got the full body, which is you standing there, the whole of you. And then you've got active photo, which is you doing something active that you enjoy, a social photo, and then something random. The random photo is the one that usually gets the conversation. You want to bait your profile with as many hooks as possible. So imagine, put yourself in the position of the person who's landing on your profile. If you can't think of any questions to ask, you need to think more and think about, right, how can I make this easy? Imagine if I was to match with this person, what questions would I ask? Because it's the ones that are really easy to ask. Those are the ones that get the activity.
Yeah, this is something we created a free ebook actually for men. What's it called? 8 huge mistakes men make in their dating profile. And one of them, we had like a couple of sections for photos, and in there, like we talked about having different personas in your photos, because actually, when you land on someone's profile, the first picture, like I said, is the most vital one, because I've watched women actually swipe on dating apps, and it's very interesting because it's very different from men. Men just go, she's hot, yes.
Yeah.
Women will look at the first photo and go, okay, that's a good one. Yeah. Let me go to the next one. They go to the next photo and it's like, nope, he's wearing stupid shirt. On to the next one. And you're like, wow, what? But they're like, nope. And it's that thing of going, okay, cool. I have to have a decent close up that's preferably not a selfie. Like, I'm a big fan of recommending that clients go and see a proper photographer, see a photographer who knows what they're doing. And I'm also big on backgrounds, like being intelligent with your backgrounds. Like, okay, if I look at a picture, like, and both of me and AJ are kind of photographers, and we've kind of studied, and it's like, what does that background say about you?
Yeah.
What is the message that's being kind of portrayed here? What's the story?
Yeah.
What's in there that I can ask you questions about? Like, that's the one thing I'm always really kind of looking at. And even, I guess, the times when I've been on dating apps, I look at a girl's pictures and I'm like, okay, where are you? Where is this picture taken? What am I seeing in the background? Like, are you on holiday? Are you out with some friends? Like, does that bar look interesting? What's on the bookcase?
Yeah.
And I think for men to get more into that mindset of, like, not just looking, going, okay, it's a picture of me that's clear. It's like, what does this whole thing say about me?
Yeah. Yeah. It's looking at more than just the pose or just having any old photo up. It's about looking in more depth.
Yeah. I think some of the ones that, because men don't really pay attention. I think I've seen loads where it'd just be them standing by a car. It's not necessarily their car, and it's just like, and then so it's like they haven't. And what's obvious to me is then it's just like, I needed to put a photo up, so I put a photo of me up, and it's just any old photo. There's no consideration for, like, we've seen pictures of people just putting a photo with them at the gym, for example, and it's not necessarily that they're doing anything at the gym. It's just they're just standing inside of a gym, and so it doesn't communicate anything. And I guess, yeah, that's an important factor here, is to actually realize that everything is communicating. So if you're going to put a photo and you're at a restaurant, like, what is that saying? Like, what are you trying to, not just what is it saying, but what are you trying to say, rather? What are you communicating with that?
And it's like what David said, not giving someone a reason to say no. So filtering through your profile and thinking, right, why would someone say no to this, and eliminating anything that's going to give them any doubt. If you know that the person is going to look at that profile and find fault, how can you eliminate those faults? I think that's really important.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think it's I guess I always see photography as a visual communication. And I think if it's like, women get that for the most part with photography, because maybe they just spend a lot more time taking photos, like you say, it's like asking your mate to take a photo of you. If you're out with your mates and they're all guys and you say, oh mate, can you take a photo of me by this background? It's really nice. You'll be pretty sure you're going to get a little bit of a laugh. Yeah. They're going to tease you a little bit, blah, blah, blah. But actually that taking all that on is well worth it if you get a really nice photo out of it. Like I have this thing with people sometimes and AJ's probably experienced it, is if I see my friend sitting and I like the background, I like how it's composed, I'll be like, give me your phone now. And I go like, boom, boom, take a couple of pictures and I give it back to them. And then people are like, what are you doing? I'm like, look at the photos. And they look at them and go, oh, that's really nice. Oh, that's good, isn't it? And you're like, yeah, like it's almost like you want to say, guys, let's get into the habit of, for each other, whenever you see your mate and he's in a good background, it looks good, it could be going on his Tinder profile, just shoot it on your phone for him. You're doing me a massive favor.
That's so true. I noticed one thing that works well, and this is a bit of a hack, is using bright color. I don't know if you ever click on YouTube and you notice that all of the most trending videos have always got some kind of really hooky, bright color to it. And if you can go to that one step further, which is including a piece of, item of clothing or something that stands out, something that's bright with contrasted against black or white background, just really pops. Those kind of photos are the ones that stop people in their tracks. It's the dark and murky and badly lit photos that just people glaze over. I think they call it the RAS, reticular activating system, which is the part in our brain that filters information. And we are so bombarded with messages that we often just filter and only allow certain bits of information to pass through. And it can just be that one bright colored photo that stands out and makes someone stop and go, whoa, okay. And then they flick through. So like you say, building that portfolio and taking care of, and I actually think it's, the barriers to entry are really low. It's so easy to stand out online, considering that especially most guys don't make nearly any effort
but that's the thing, isn't it? It just seems like so many people, exactly what you just said there, is like you're well aware of what the reality of the situation is when people are dating online. It's the same as say online marketing. There's so many people advertising their product, and so if you're not aware of that and you're just thinking all I've got to do is just stick up a photo and hopefully that's going to be enough, then you're not going to realize that there's loads of people doing that, and there's a sea of just average photos that are bland and not sticking out. And that's where, like, as David mentioned earlier, like, many of us are not pro photographers or even have any inclination of to what makes a good photo. And so it's really worth actually speaking to someone who does. It's just like, because that tip you just said there is, it's like, it's someone who knows, right? What does it take to actually make a photo pop? What makes it stand out? And the average person with their phone camera doesn't necessarily know that. And the phone camera is only going to do what you point it at. It's not going to perform magically. Well, they're getting there. They're definitely getting there with the profile shots and stuff. But yeah, they're yet to perform that magic where they're just going to make you shine. And really, you need someone with a good eye to do that.
Yeah, and definitely, if you've got female friends who are good at this stuff, and they've already got an Instagram account and they know how to take good photos, then take advantage of that. Just be honest and open with someone. Say, listen, this is my goal. I'm looking to meet the right person. This is the steps I need to take to get there. Can you help me get some decent photos? And be proactive, I think, is a really important thing. making time for it, not just being intentional about your photo taking is so important, because it's such an easy win. It really is. And it doesn't
Do you
take
think
a tremendous amount of effort to get it right. Sorry, David.
Do you think that there's like a fear for men around making an effort? Because I see this, with pictures, and I see it with profiles, like what they write in their profiles, which I think is like probably the next most important thing, is like a lack of effort, and does it say a lot? I always feel like if I was a woman and I come across profile, and actually let me speak for myself, when I was on dating apps, when I came across a woman's profile and it was one photo and no writing, I used to just think, you're not willing to really make an effort. You're actually afraid to make a real effort here, because in your head, in somewhere, maybe you're thinking, if I don't make any effort and I don't get anywhere, then I haven't lost anything. But if I make an effort and no one responds to me, then the rejection will be felt worse.
Yeah. Oh yeah, completely agree with that. Yeah, I think it's with that kind of stuff. Oftentimes, it's maybe it's not always that. Maybe it's just lack of guidance and having a structure that you can work towards. Because coming up, it's uncomfortable finding a way to describe yourself that doesn't come across as big-headed, or not having that guidance and that knowledge on, right, how do I write a bio that really describes me well? And without that help, it's easy just to chuck 15 emojis back to back and just hope for the best, which is what you see all the time. I don't know what guys' profiles are like, but like I said, it is, if you take the time just to get this right and plan this out, then for kind of the standard profile out there, with a few small tweaks, you could easily double the amount of matches and likes, and that just gives you so much more choice. And then you're far higher likely to match with someone who's actually going to be compatible with you. And it's the difference between fishing in a pond versus fishing in the ocean. You want to be working with larger numbers.
Yeah, I remember from my days, I can resonate with like this feeling of not necessarily like super overwhelmed with it, but there is a sense of like, I've now got to get it. I got to get it right. I've got to get this right. Like I've got to get the right pictures in. I've got to write a bio that's catchy. I don't, because there's saying the right thing to attract the right person, and there's also saying the wrong thing and dissuading people and not wanting to do that. So then it can become a bit of a vicious mental cycle, where it's like, well, am I saying too much? And especially when you're reading stuff online, advice online, then it can be like one person says you should do this, another person says you should do that, and then you're just like, well, I don't know where do I, what's working and what's not working, and all of that. So then there's a bit of analysis paralysis, I feel, for a lot of men and women. It's just with how they should be being, and then the sad thing is, I suppose, then feeling like they don't know. So like I don't know how I'm supposed to express myself, or I'm not complete in who I am to be able to express myself fully. My friends seem to be having success online dating, and the way they write things, maybe I should copy them, and then never really knowing like what to put, what not to put. So on that note, like what's your advice around what men and women should put in their bios?
I think include the quirky information, the stuff that's not predictable but is personal to you. So I always advise to go for something that isn't going to be like, okay, this is what everyone says. Take a different path, share information about yourself that is completely off the wall. Those small quirks, those small habits that you have that differentiate you from everyone else out there. Because David, you were talking about everyone appearing the same and speaking the same and having similar photos. Being that element of being a little bit different helps you really stand out from the crowd. So I would say, whether it's friends have described me as this, or things that quirky habits that you have, or party tricks that you can do, whatever it is. And I've included this in the book, basically 2-3 pages of sentence starters which describes that, force you to explain something about yourself that's different to the norm. And if you just bundle them together, you can form some kind of paragraph. I know Hinge, for example, breaks it up, and there's a reason why Hinge asks these kind of pre-filled questions, because they want you to say something that's going to be different and is going to spark conversation. Because really the purpose of the bio is to communicate something about you, your lifestyle, your personality, but really it's just to get conversation going and to get it started smoothly without it being a non-starter. It's very, the hey, how are you? How's your weekend? It's just conversation just nosedives straight after that point. And to start a conversation where both two people, are they're starting on a topic that is exciting or different or is easy. You've got things to work with. It's like kindling on a fire. You start with something and you slowly add the wood and you build up the conversation with time until the point in which it reaches that pinnacle, and you say, okay, well, this is cool. How about we hang out next week, or let's go grab some food at some point? That's really what it is. It's about moving, using your bio as a way to spark the conversation, take it through that initial conversation to the point in which there's enough rapport there to then warrant a date. So my advice would be to share interesting information about yourself that is different, and it is quirky and separates you from the pack.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's like bang on. I think there's I think not the rebuttal, but the concern I see with men is like, there's like, I don't know what to say about myself, right? The old, I don't know what to say about myself. When actually, like you said, it's almost like sitting down and go, how do I spend my time? What do I think is really interesting? What do I love doing? What do I enjoy about my life? What do I do that other people don't necessarily do? And we always say, like, be vulnerable with it, like share, because there's maybe that fear of being judged as being weird or whatever. But actually, like, a lot of that information it can actually really connect you with someone, or it allows them to at least go, that's not something I do, but let me ask about that. Let me dig into that and get to know this person around that topic.
How did you guys get on with your bios?
I have I've been in a relationship for like the last year, and you've been you're to be engaged, Ahmad.
I am engaged. I am. Yeah.
To be married, I mean.
Yeah. I mean, for me, it's an interesting one. Was like, I think it's like 2014. Like, was the last time I really went hard on like dating apps and stuff, and that, like, I'd come out of a serious sort of health issue with I had sciatica, and that took me out of the game for a while. I couldn't really walk, so going on dates was a bit tough. So then coming out, I was like, right, let's deal with this, and then I really made it a focus. But then I got into a relationship at the end of 2014, and when I came out of that relationship, I jumped onto the apps like in a moment of loneliness and thinking, right, I want to connect with people, and then quickly realized, like, I don't really have many photos by myself. Like, most of the photos are from my relationship, and and I was just like, man, this is a lot of hassle. Like, and literally, like what I was saying to you earlier about the idea of like having to write the bio and all this, I was like, I was like, you know what? I'm not going to touch it. And back then, I had the luxury of doing that. And so what I did is I just went out into my life, because I'm quite sociable, and I did quite a few things in my life. Whereas there's a sport that I love called parkour. So I'd go to parkour classes. I'd go to different events. And actually, that's where eventually at different events is where I met my fiance. And it's just like we just got talking. And so it was. I went old school. I went analog. I went back to that analog way of dating. So when it came to like bios, like, I always would have kept it simple, but similar to what you're saying, like I would have expressed something about myself. Like the podcast is called Authentic Dating Series, and one of the things that David and I both stumbled upon in our journeys was that the power of authenticity, the power of just being you,
Yeah.
like unfiltered, just going. And what you said earlier about the quirkiness and that being the thing, kind of like your sister and how she met her partner because of that like one line. It's like that actually allows people to connect with the human, the real personality, as opposed to this visage that you're this perfection or this person that just looks the same as everyone else. Like, oh, I've gone traveling, or I've done this, I've done that. So, well, what do you what's actually going on for you? What makes you tick? What makes you laugh? What makes you weird? Even and we even had this with a former coaching client who's still in touch with us, and he was talking to us today about a conversation he had, a vulnerable conversation he had, and it was a beautiful thing. Like he was just saying, like, by actually being vulnerable and open, it actually created a connection. So we really get what you're saying when you say, that's the things, those little tidbits, as opposed to, rather than holding back and thinking I need to protect and give off a good image and reserve all these things until I feel safe to do so. It's actually going, you know what? Let me just say, this is how I like things and this is how I like to live. And then let others be like, oh, either I like that or I don't like that. I think the word is polarizing, right? It's like to actually polarize by saying, this is who I am. I'm not everyone. I'm this. And like you said, when you do that, the competition isn't very big out there, because most people aren't showing up in their fullest self. They're just going, they're just saying the bare minimum, or as one picture and no bio. So
and it's almost starting that connection before you've even had a conversation. When you feel like you know someone before you've even said hello, it lowers the barriers and removes the friction that's going to happen. You can just slip right into conversation so easily after that point. And you feel like you're talking to someone who you've known for ages, especially if you jump on something that's so personal and funny, and you're talking to them like you've known them all your life. That's when it's just to move from, because it just eliminates that awkwardness, that initial awkwardness, because there's nothing more awkward than talking to a stranger on a phone via text. It's like there's nothing more difficult than that, and it's so far removed from that physical connection. But if you can make it as easy and as smooth as possible, and you jump on one of those conversations. I remember this was years ago when I was online dating, and I remember talking to someone, and it was just something on one of our bios, something. We got into conversation, and conversation just flowed. There was no hour, 2 hour break in between messages. We were literally just live talking, and then we ended up going on a date that night because it just felt so natural, so smooth. And that I think that was partly because of the vulnerability and also the sharing of information that made conversation just so easy.
Yeah. No, I was on last year I was on probably just one app actually. And I just kind of sat down and was like, what do I do with myself? Like, what do I really do? What I really enjoy? And I kind of listed out, and I was like, okay, so like, I think I even had in the pod, like I have a podcast in there because it's like part of my life. It's an important part of who I am. And I was like, I love to exercise, but I'm not obsessed with it anymore because, I've come to love yoga, not just for the exercise. I love it for also the mindfulness, the calm that it brings to my life. I talked about meditation a bit. I've been going to a tantra school for the last 2 years. So I went into something I've really learned a lot from doing. And I'd come off like doing 2 years of travel a few years back. So I talked about my love for just like enriching cultures and interesting places. And it's just like people, if people resonate with that, they message me and I message them. And if they don't resonate with that, then that's cool, because I'm quite comfortable that in who I am and like the things that I enjoy. I think that's an important thing, is like you said, just be quirky, be weird, man. Go be weird.
For you, David, was there an awareness of the type of person that you wanted to attract before you built your profile?
Yeah, I think for me, it's like I've become very conscious of like the sort of woman that I want. And it's interesting because like me and AJ have talked about it over the years, and it's just like, one of the things then what I wanted an open relationship. I wanted someone who was like up to developing themselves as a person, but also seeing a relationship as a tool of self-development and awareness and emotional awareness and a level of emotional intelligence and so forth. Open-mindedness is really important to me. And I just come from that place because that's how I see the world. So that's the sort of women that I always attract. Wherever I go, it's this like hilarious thing sometimes. It's like I could go to anywhere I go, I will meet women who just resonate with the sort of things I'm into. It's just, and I think that's something that men sometimes forget is when you can just embody who you are and what you're about, you will just attract the women who resonate with that constantly.
Yeah. So true.
I was thinking, so since we're talking about like post-corona dating, one of the things I think is going to be an interesting topic like now-ish is that dating multiple people. Do you think that's going to be something that people just deem to be like unacceptable?
So do you mean before a relationship or having open relationships?
Before relationship.
Before a relationship. Yeah, I mean it's a tricky one because it does feel quite unnatural. I think many years ago we didn't have such a great choice, and I think there were statistics based on the amount of people who married. Like 50% of them in New York were within, I think, 4 blocks from their house. So it wasn't that it was easier to find people back in the day. I just think it was more based on convenience before then. And now I think online dating has just blown everything up, and social media as well, which is such a big way in which people meet each other. So choice nowadays is so much bigger than it ever was before. And I think that creates its own challenges. I think it forces, we have to step up, and we can't just sit on our laurels like it was before. It's like, right, like what you were saying about stepping up and becoming that best version of yourself and owning that. But I think it's important because so many interactions fail, and that could be because of just incompatibility, and which is why it's important to have lots of people on the go at once until you've got some kind of certainty that it's going to turn into something. Because there's nothing worse than getting caught up in that one person. It lasted for 4 months, and then they drop off, or for whatever reason it just doesn't quite work out, and then you've got to start again. And I think it's almost like a business. You wouldn't want to rely solely on one person or one customer and then go and find someone else. You almost want to build that pipeline and have a flow of people who you're talking to and dating, but doing it in a way that is respectful to the person or the people who you're seeing. So you're not becoming intimate with loads of people and going to be upsetting people. But it's about, this is what I'm looking for. I put myself out here. I'm prepared and ready to meet someone. I'm just dating at this and owning that and feeling no shame in the fact that you're seeing other people, because you know that naturally things are going to fall off. And it's like a job interview. If you're going for a job interview, you don't just go for one and then go to the next one and to the next one. You open yourself up to different opportunities and you see what comes your way. But as long as you don't commit too soon to multiple people at once. Yeah.
Yeah. My throat there. I've it's funny when you said the word pipeline. It's something that I used to like personally believe in, and I still say it now, is like, the beginnings of your pipeline of getting phone numbers, meeting women, going out, that sort of thing. And if you don't have people flowing through your pipeline, then you're going to run into this scarcity mentality that when you meet someone you like, you're going to just be like, oh my God, they are my everything. I'm going to project all of my life's hopes and dreams onto them. And when that doesn't quite work out, you're going to be devastated because you're going to be worrying about where the next person you could, meet and be with. Whereas if you're more of that free mindset, and I think with the pipeline, what comes is this kind of abundance mentality, really. It's like knowing that you can meet someone at any moment. And I think if you can even have that abundance mentality without having such a full pipeline, if you can just be in that mindset of like, I can meet someone whenever. And when I do meet someone, I can connect with them. And then if that doesn't work out, that's okay. But it's where you do have, like, you meet one person a year, start to get on, and then they disappear for whatever reason, it doesn't work out. You have this kind of fear and scarcity and I see that a lot for men and women in the dating world now.
I use the analogy with my clients as though it's a shop, and you've got your shop, and people come in and out of the shop. Some people buy things, some people don't. Some people just come in, browse, and then walk out. But you'd never chase that person down the street who doesn't buy anything and ask them why they didn't buy anything. A lot of people do that in their dating life. If someone just walks in and then leaves, and they're not really that interested, they'll follow up and get caught up on that one person. But the issue is that there's not enough people in the shop. If you've got people coming and going, and you understand that there will be naturally a conversion rate when it comes to those people who will actually turn into a relationship, then you're cool. You know, people can come and go. Yeah. Some people will show up and leave. Some people stay and buy. Some people are kind of on the fence a little bit. You understand that people fall into those three categories: those that, you know, are ready to buy now, those that are interested in buying, those that will never buy. If you understand that the people, and the same applies to relationships, you know, there's people who are ready for relationships now, people who are kind of interested, and those people who just aren't interested at all. Being able to separate those groups, but having enough people walking through that shop that you can stay abundant, and you're not grasping at whatever comes your way and hoping that it works out, because you're like, this is all I can get. There's nothing. And that energy comes off, you know. It's if you're dating someone, it's clear that in someone's, and I've been there before in my past, where it's like your lack of choices comes through, and you're like, I have to make this work. You know, if it doesn't work out, then I have no other options, and that's, you know, it's not a comfortable place to be.
No. It creates pressure.
Yeah.
So one thing before we wrap it up, actually, and I've been thinking about this, and I kind of have my own theories, is like, how is the pandemic going to change people's sexual habits? Because, you know, before people were very kind of comfortable with, you know, maybe, you know, meeting people, hooking up, sleeping with a couple of different people, maybe on the go. And, you know, now with, you know, the changes that have put into place and the government regulations, that makes that a bit more difficult. Do you feel that's going to have a kind of long lasting change to dating, and do you think that's, if so, is it going to be positive for people?
That's a good question. They say it's 67 days to form a new habit, and I can see that in the way that people change the way they socialize, and the way that people aren't rushing to the pubs or rushing to restaurants nowadays, because people are very used to the way things are being done. I think it would take a long time for people to change. So I do think that will apply the same to dating and sexual relationships. People will probably end up slowing down a lot more, being much more selective, especially if there's that element of fear involved, and people think, oh, I don't know, I don't want to put myself out there too much. I have to be careful about who I talk to, and having that level of trust, because there's so much trust there. If you're going to be sleeping with someone, you want to know that they've been safe and they haven't been exposing themselves to, you know, risky environments that may make them ill. So I think it will slow things down quite a lot, and people will be much more selective, I feel. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's definitely there. I very early on, I observed the differences in society. You know, I call it the shuffle. You know, when two people meet in the corridor and stuff, and it's just like. But now it's turned into, you know, people kind of literally just giving you full way. It's like when you're down a thin road, you know, only one car can pass at a time, so everyone, you know, you take it in turns to walk down a corridor. And so I was like, wow, that habit's going to take a while. It's already formed, and people have already established that, you know, whether you're going up and down the stairs or whatever, people are moving out the way. That has formed. And even in my own self, as I observe it, because similar to you, Benjamin, I've studied a lot of like body language, and, you know, reading up all these things. It's just, I've always been fascinated by it, right? Like, just and so seeing how people have changed, it's just like, wow. It's just like, so I've always been observing this on a societal level, and I think that in itself, it would, if everything goes away, it will eventually settle down. But if things like persist, then there's always going to be that thing in the back of our minds. Because even for me, where I feel very healthy, I take all my vitamins, whatever, I'm still, I'm not out there like brazenly just going around licking lampposts and stuff. Like, it's like you move with a certain caution because we don't know. There's an invisible thing out there, and we don't know who and what, and until we do, it's best to play safe. And so for many people, playing it safe is going to mean slowing down and not acting on impulse as much and changing habits. So I actually bumped into an old school friend in the shops earlier today. I hadn't seen her in ages, and instantly it was like 2 magnets of the same polarization, where you just go, oh no, like it's just like not even hello, no handshake, no, just like, oh yeah, hey, how's it going, and like just standing like really far away, and I was just like, oh yeah, that's funny because it's just how it is right now, and that is, like you say, it's the habit that we form. So yeah.
I think what I see is there's a few things that happen. I think a lot of people will couple up into relationships because it'll just feel like the comfortable thing to do. And I think, that'd be positive for some people. Those relations will last onwards. And I think there'll be a minority of people who will be very fearful and just won't have sex with anybody. I think the same with dating. I think there's some people who will just be like, nope, it's too scary. It's too dangerous. I'm not going to touch it. But I also think there's going to be some people who they're just going to say to hell with the risk, and they want to really just go back closer to what things were, and they want to have fun and enjoy themselves. And I think the more obviously bars kind of open up and people start going to them, I think more, people are less concerned with risk when they're drunk, obviously. Sure. So I think that will make a big difference. But I think there will be different camps. I think there will be some people who are, just well engaged. But I think you're going to see a lot more coupling up, I think, because people are like, well, I can't be, especially some guys who are maybe playing the field to a certain degree before, they'll be like, well, I can't quite do that now. So let me just, be with this one girl for a while. And, it could work out very well.
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot of positives actually coming out of it in terms of sexuality. I think there's also couples who will probably do some more exploration as well.
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting point. You should definitely do some research and have some data on that. The coupling theory.
I could
Nobel Peace Prize. yeah.
Mm-hmm. What was that?
Yeah, I could definitely see that happening. I think people will get stuck into that comfort zone, and it will be familiar, and that the risk that comes with being promiscuous and putting yourself out there will prevent a lot of people and push people into relationships. And then once they're locked into that routine, they've been together for some time. I remember reading a crazy stat the other day. It was something like 80% of divorces filed are by women, which surprised me quite a lot. So it seemed that guys are harder to get committed, but also harder to get out of a relationship. And it kind of reminds me of, like a football team. Guys will never change teams when it comes to, who they support. Even if they're having a bad season, they're always going to stick it out. So I guess, well, for my audience particularly, it does give that level of hope that, once guys are in and they've got through that first few months, that they're much more likely to stick around. So going back to what you were saying, David, I think there will be a lot of relationships that do come out of this.
Yeah. I've always wondered, someone told me that most relationships, one of the reasons that women fell for divorce a lot is due to infidelity. And I find that it's interesting that the man is, often it's assumed the man is cheating in these situations. And I don't always think it's that way, but yet it's the woman that obviously falls for divorce most of the time. So it's not even that the man might be unhappy. They don't necessarily end the relationship. They cause the woman to end the relationship, which is a very interesting dynamic that I think we've all probably seen and experienced in our lives.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, boys, it's been a wonderful conversation about all these things. I think we could probably talk for hours and hours and hours. But there's a lot of wonderful women that listen to our podcasts. And Benji, how would they get in contact with you and work with you and so forth?
Yeah, so I'm on Instagram. That's my main platform. So it's at Benjamin Daly, BenjaminDaly. And if you're looking for a guy and you're a woman and you're looking for why guys don't commit, I've actually got a book that I'm giving away as a free download, and that is bit.ly/why men don't commit. and that's a free download. And I've given a deep dive into the male psychology and why guys think the way they do and why it's so difficult at times to get a guy into a relationship.
Wonderful. We'll put that in the show notes as well.
Oh, amazing. Thank you so much for having me today, guys.
It's been a pleasure. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, it's been great fun.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Cheers, buddy.
Cheers, guys.
Cool.
Cheers.
Ciao.
So now you can't complain about that, guys, right? You got clear pointers of how your profile should look, what should be in your photos, what you should be looking like in your photos, and the quality of them. It's like, ultimately it's the most important part of your profile, and not making effort is just not an option.
Yeah.
When it go for it.
Yeah, and I was going to say, and the other thing as well is like, so often guys will be like, but how do I know this is right? I mean, you heard it from a guy who's teaching women about dating, right? And so, he sees what they see, and he sees what the biggest problems that men face, and so, it's not just from us anymore. You're not just heard it from us; you heard it from him, and he's the one. He's directly, in line and getting it from women. So, you know exactly what it is that you need to do. So go ahead and do it. And as David mentioned before, we actually have our own downloadable ebook on the 8 biggest mistakes men make in with their online dating and what you can do about it.
Yeah, and that has, a lot of the stuff we talk about photos in there. We have actually a very similar persona way in which Benjamin was talking, and we also go into like messages, like what your bio should contain and all those things. It's like we really get into some detail, and actually we say what you shouldn't be doing as well. So it's worth downloading that if that's obviously some interest to you as well. The other things, obviously we've got Kaka, as we mentioned earlier, create attraction through conversation. I think that's the first time I said that right. That's on the 5th of August at 5 o'clock. The 5th of August at 8:30 p.m. We'd love to have you there. We're going to go over all the ways in which you can create amazing conversation with the women that you date. Ladies, unfortunately, it's a men's only event. We're really trying to help men level up to the level where a lot of the women we speak to are at, so they can actually connect. So that's something we're doing. Also, I'm running a event around sexual performance, and the full name of the event is A Modern Man's Guide to Sex, and the first edition of that is improving your sexual performance, and that's going to be taught by me. I'm going to be doing that on behalf of Taylor Match. So if you're looking to come to that, I'm going to go through some. It's all going to be very much grounded in reality. There's going to be a lot of stuff around performance anxiety. There's going to be some stuff in there about how to last longer, what techniques you need to do, what foods you need to eat, breathing exercises and stuff like that. Stuff you can just start implementing tomorrow, and that you will see a huge difference in your sexual performance within a couple of weeks. So, and it's all tried and tested by myself and the people I know, the tantrics I know. So it's going to be great. That's on Thursday night this week, and that will be at 7:30 p.m. and you can get a ticket for that over at Taylor Match's Instagram account, or if you look for the event name on Eventbrite.
Yeah, just to add as well, I mean, in my experience, and Ahmad here speaking, is it makes such a huge difference to your dating when you have confidence in what you're doing sexually in the bedroom. Because when you know that you know how to perform and you have some modicum of control in that arena, then then you don't have that anxiety when you're on a date. And that's something that I found through my journey. So I highly recommend if anyone's umming and ahhing about jumping on this course with David, it's a must. It's an absolute must. You're definitely going to learn something. You can have huge takeaways. So I think that's a big thing. Like I think we take it for granted sometimes, but it's something when you know what you're doing sexually, it's just like boom. You just have another level of confidence, and we talk a lot about that, sexual confidence. So that's really cool.
Definitely cool. I think that's it for today.
Yeah.
Nothing else.
Well, just to say, as always, thank you to our listeners. We recently surpassed 1,000 followers on Instagram, an amazing achievement for us because we started this from zero. And it's just amazing to see how the account has grown and all the experiences we've had along the way, the people we've met. And so we're very grateful to have amassed such a great following, and we're very humbled by the fact that many people, such as yourself, you listeners, enjoy our message and resonate with what we're saying. And we hope to continue delivering good value and a positive message around dating for forever.
Forever and ever and ever.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I think that's it for this week. Thanks for listening, and ciao ciao.